Sunday morning in Lebanon, Tennessee, 1,000 degrees before the sun hit its stride. I knew that I was going to see some vintage and historically significant airplanes, maybe even get a ride, if I was lucky. I had no idea what I was walking into. Miss Cornelia sat on the ramp, a 1942 Fairchild PT-19 with the kind of presence that makes you stop and pay attention. They called this plane the Cradle of Heroes during the war. Looking at her, I understood why. This wasn't just any trainer. This was the airplane that turned farm boys from Iowa and city kids from New York into pilots. All of them climbing into cockpits just like this one while the world burned around them. November 51263, that's her tail number. For 3 years during the war, she lived at Mustang Field in Oklahoma teaching young men to fly. Day after day, student after student, each one carrying the weight of knowing where those skills were taking them.
So I'm Luke Young. I'm from Greenbrier, Tennessee, just about 30 minutes north of Nashville. Everybody kind of thinks it's all about the airplanes, and there's a definitely big draw to the airplanes, but it's more about telling the stories of the people that flew these airplanes back in the 1940s. And it's not a replica. This is the real deal. So the continuation of history is just amazing. Well, the airplane was known as the Cradle of Heroes back in World War II, and what that meant was it was where guys learned how to fly. So they started out here, and then they moved on to the Texan or the S&J and moved on to their fighter that they would actually fly in the war. But if it wasn't for the PT-19, they would never have made it to the Pacific Theater or to the European front.
By 1938, the problem had become acute. The military was still training pilots in biplanes, while combat aircraft were monoplanes. Sherman Fairchild saw this problem clearly. He looked at what everyone else was building and said, no, pilots should train in something that prepared them for what they'd actually fly in combat. Low wing, wide gear, honest about what the flying really demanded. Here's what changed truly everything about this airplane. The wing. Most airplanes, if you stall them, you lose control, spin, and game over. Conventional low-wing monoplanes stall from the tip of the wing inward. But Fairchild's engineers figured out something different. They designed this wing to stall from 1/3 of the way out on the trailing edge, not at the tip where it would kill you, but inboard where you could still control the airplane. Revolutionary engineering wrapped in wood and fabric. Everything about this airplane makes sense when you think about wartime training. Wooden wings, not because wood was cheaper, but because aluminum was needed for bombers and fighters. Steel tube fuselage that could absorb punishment and keep flying. Landing gear designed to withstand what the engineers called the roughest kind of primary stage landings. The wide stance wasn't aesthetic, it was engineered to prevent ground loops by inexperienced pilots. The engine sits inverted, the cylinders are upside down. Most people think that that's strange until you learn that Fairchild started as an aerial photographer. If you invert the engine, you get better visibility over the nose and less metal blocking your view when you're trying to land. Everything on the PT-19 was made to be quickly repairable, everything accessible. When you needed to even change the entire engine, a mere 5 bolts held the entire mount to the fuselage. 2 mechanics could swap the engine in 30 minutes. Wartime pragmatism at its finest. It looks like I was going to get my turn after all. I'm ready, Ron.
All right.
I'm ready here. I'm here to listen.
Don't touch anything.
Luke Young was my pilot. He's a professional aviator who flies a Citation on normal days. Today, this former commemorative Air Force cadet, now colonel, who worked his way up to flying this warbird, shows me his true passion. When he fired up that inverted Ranger inline 6, something shifted. The rumble through the aluminum, the smell of hot oil and history mixing with Tennessee summer morning air. Open cockpit, no canopy between you and the sky. Wind everywhere, noise everywhere. This is what flying felt like in 1942. The engine settled into its rhythm, the world spread out below us in a way that felt graceful and meditative. I was completely relaxed, enjoying the view and taking in the sensation of the open cockpit flight like it was a joyride, which for me, it was. But every 19-year-old who climbed into this same cockpit 80 years ago carried a different weight. They weren't sightseeing over Tennessee. They were preparing for combat, for flying formations through flak, for the possibility that this might be among the last peaceful moments they may ever know. The contrast hit me as we flew smooth circles around the town. The same gentle controls had been gripped by boys learning to kill or be killed. The same engine that hummed so contentedly had powered training flights for kids who knew they might not come home. The airplane doesn't know the difference. It flies the same, responds the same, and forgives the same mistakes. But the mission, the weight of what it was preparing people for, that changes everything. Luke warned me about something. He said, this plane is so forgiving, it can make you complacent. If you get too comfortable in the PT-19, you'll develop habits that less forgiving aircraft won't tolerate. This is exactly the point. Better to build confidence gradually than wash out in training. When we turned final approach back to Lebanon, Luke set up the airplane with the kind of precision you'd expect from someone who'd made this approach hundreds of times. Power reduction, attitude, airspeed, everything very deliberate, very smooth. From the back seat, I watched his hands and feet work the controls. Tiny corrections that spoke of hours of practice and an intimate understanding of what this machine needed. It was like watching a ghost of the past right in front of me. Every control input Luke made had been made thousands of times before by pilots long gone. The same stick movement, the same rudder pressure, the same delicate dance between man and machine that had played out in this cockpit since 1942. The skill required, the gentle touch needed to harness all of that power and engineering into a smooth arrival reminded me that flying has always been about more than just getting from here to there. It's about conversation between pilot and aircraft, the trust built through repetition, the confidence earned through countless landings. The PT-19 settled toward the runway like it belonged there. No drama, no fight with the controls, the wide stance landing gear tracking straight down the center line. The touchdown was everything those wartime engineers intended, soft, forgiving, and the robust oleo struts absorbed what little bump was there, and we rolled out like we'd been doing this for years. That smooth touchdown in Tennessee was connected to every combat landing those pilots would ever make. Every carrier approach, every emergency return, every time they needed the airplane to forgive their mistakes and just get them home. I felt something shift in my understanding of what the commemorative Air Force really does. They're not just preserving airplanes. They're preserving experiences of trust. It's about the human stories as much as it is about the aircraft. The Cradle of Heroes lived up to its name. Of the thousands of PT-19s built during the war, over 8,000 when you count all the variants, only about 98 remain airworthy worldwide today. 98. Think about that for a moment. Out of all those aircraft that trained the pilots who won the war, fewer than 100 are still teaching lessons, still carrying passengers, still connecting us to that history. Miss Cornelia is one of those 98, and her story makes her survival even more remarkable. For 51 years, she sat silent, gathering dust. But in 2001, someone saw value in bringing her back. 8 years of restoration, 8 years of caring hands putting her back together. My flight in Miss Cornelia was 20 minutes in the air, but it connected me to 80 years of aviation, to thousands of young pilots, to the designers and the builders who created machines so good that they're still teaching. We are all temporary here, but some things outlast us. The PT-19 is proof that when human beings commit fully to something and really pour their hearts and souls and skills into it, they can create something that keeps teaching long after its creators are gone. Every time someone climbs into Miss Cornelia's cockpit, every time those wheels leave the ground, every time a new pilot discovers what it felt like to learn to fly in 1942, that history stays alive. I owe a debt of gratitude to Dev, Cannon, and everyone at the Commemorative Air Force Music City Wing for making this experience possible. Their dedication to preserving aviation history and sharing it with others like me is exactly what keeps these stories alive. You don't have to be a pilot to be a part of this. The Commemorative Air Force needs mechanics, historians, photographers, event organizers, fundraisers, storytellers, every kind of volunteer you can think of. Find your local chapter and just show up. There is a place for you. The lessons continue, but only if we choose to keep teaching them.